It's just off a cliff.
Yeah.
Don't even try.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, so now, like when we go out for date night,
Yes.
Date night starts
at 4
early. And
give me the geriatric.
I make
give me the early
no
bird
apologies
special.
for it. Like,
because I'd rather be home at night. We have shit to do. You got to get up and
I want to get
stuff.
some sleep.
Yes.
Welcome to this week's episode of Teaching Keating. Hi, Momo.
Hi, babe.
We were
How's it going?
Good. We were just talking about, and by the time this comes out, the Grammys will be long behind us.
Yeah.
But it's funny, we were just talking about the Grammys.
Well, we were talking about the Grammys, and we were talking before because we went and little known fact, we like a lot of concerts.
We do.
And so we went. You got me for Christmas, which I was very happy about. Justin Timberlake just came to Denver not long ago.
Second weirdest.
Oh,
concert was great.
Worst.
Concert was great. Second
okay.
weirdest concert crowd we've ever been a part of.
Crowd.
Yes.
Super weird. First weirdest, Snoop at the Fillmore. Really awkward crowd.
Which also super small venue. He played for almost
concert.
3 hours.
Yeah.
Incredible show.
Yeah.
Weirdest group of people collected in a room together.
A lot of old people. Like
us?
No.
Oh.
Like actual geriatrics. Like
so
older,
slightly older than us.
Yes.
It was so
60
weird.
60 and above. A lot of
there
60
were,
and
there
above.
There were 60 and above.
Yes.
There were like kids who looked like older teenagers.
There were parents who brought their kids, which I thought was weird. I was like, okay. It was a real mixed bag.
Oh, like such a mixed bag.
Also at Justin Timberlake.
But when you consider how long like Snoop and
sure.
Timberlake have been making music, like of course you're going to get a wide range of people.
You would think Justin Timberlake less so, but actually when he started playing his catalog, you were just like, oh my gosh, he's been around like so long. And he even said at one point in the crowd, like, how many of you, this is your first time seeing me? How many of you have been like the last
Because young people know him from like Trolls.
Yes, Trolls. There were kids there.
Kids in
dressed
like troll outfits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of moms.
And then there's
a lot of middle-aged moms.
What did you say? It was like prom for middle-aged women.
Yeah.
Who, like people who fell in love with
Going
Timberlake
outrageous.
during NSYNC.
Oh, yeah.
And they were,
me included.
They were sparkling.
They were sparkling. They were ready to go. They were dancing up a storm. It was the whole thing. A lot of men who looked like they didn't want to be there, but then ultimately had a good time. Yeah.
I have no problem with stuff like that. Where I'm just
you've
like,
been to a lot of shows.
Yeah. Also, I like good music.
Right.
Wherever I can find it.
Yeah.
Whatever age, whatever genre.
Also, it's not like we're actually dragging you to NSYNC. That was 20 years ago, 25. Just
Correct.
like. It's just him and his dancers now, so like, get over it. It's fine. Anyway,
and the dude's crazy
talented. Crushed. He
looked
great. He looked great. But it got us thinking. We're going to talk about aging.
Yeah.
Because at one point, I said to you, I was like, well, first of all, we were talking about the crowd, just because the crowd was such a mixed bag, and that's kind of how we got on it. Because all ages, all sorts, all and he said, "How long have you been seeing me? Like, for like the last 25 years?" And I was like, "Okay,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah."
I was in the
you
beginning,
gave a little woo.
man.
You're like, woo.
I probably did. It was like my second vodka tonic, but yeah, I did. There was a woo. There was a handful of.
But all
that,
like, I started talking about the Grammys, and it's a good segue because, like, we were saying in this room, like, not a lot of us watch the Grammys because it's like I don't even know a lot of the artists anymore.
Yeah,
and part of that makes me feel old.
Right.
And I think it's an appropriate time for us to talk about aging.
Great. Well, and we were going to talk about it anyway because it was one of the things we said on the way after the concert. We're like, that was amazing. He was so good.
So good.
Just crushing still. But the guy's about to be 44 or just, whatever, was 44.
Snoop was awesome too. And he was about to be 60 when we saw him.
Right. And so sometimes it's like, hey.
He killed it, by the way.
He did kill it.
He played for,
hasn't missed
like
a
I
beat.
said, almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
And what was awesome is he didn't play a full one of any of his songs.
Went to song
He would play
to song
the best
to song
part
to
of his
song,
song and then bang,
on
off to the next banger. And it was just like.
And you forget, like with a catalog as big as his, like you can play all night long. He has such great music.
Awesome.
Yeah. And similar with Timberlake, we didn't realize until he was there, and I was like, oh yeah, his catalog is really deep.
Yeah.
A lot of songs. And he had a great set list, I thought.
Did you feel old at the Timberlake show?
That's a great question. I didn't feel old at Snoop. I felt great. I did feel a smidge older at Timberlake.
Okay.
Mostly because of everybody else around us was our age or older. And so I was like, ooh, okay, he knows at least who his crowd is.
Yeah.
But also it had been a minute, and people who were grown, who were like fans of his when they were little kids for NSYNC, and now they're grown and married and like having kids of his own. So I kind of felt for him. I was like, oh, you probably feel a little old too.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, he was dancing just as well as he always has. Sounded great. He
crushed.
Didn't miss it.
I have no problems. Like, he was good.
But he looked, not 25.
No.
And I was saying that before. I was like, he looked 44. He looked every bit of 44. And I'm great with it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for aging. Thank you for still doing what you're doing at the age that you're doing. But I felt more aware at the Timberlake concert.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
Because you said like, I'm sure you probably felt old. Are there times when you feel old?
All the time.
Okay.
Mostly when our children go, for people that were born in the 1900s. Which is accurate. But really funny, just even saying it out loud, because they just don't have you're born in the 1900s. It's a funny statement in and of itself, but yes. When so I feel old like then. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's times we'll get into this, like when you feel old.
Sure.
When did you have a moment or a series of moments when you realized you weren't young anymore?
Yeah, probably. I think I had a series of moments before I had children. I'm like, I'm not young. When I was teaching, when I was in Southern California teaching, and there were just like things that I missed.
That doesn't count. You were in your late 20s.
I was in my 29.
Okay.
But when you're teaching 13-year-olds, 29, I think that was like the first real awareness of like, ooh, we're missing.
Okay.
And there are things that you guys are talking about that I just don't get. And I think what I felt was like, I don't care to try and figure it out. Right? Like the maturity of like, is this something I should invest some time in to sort of bridge that gap? And I remember thinking like, probably not. It's not as important. Not that there weren't other things that I would have invested in my classroom to sort of bridge the gap, because I'm not saying that, like there's still music and like sort of natural connectivities, but it was something like, and we've talked about this before, like the Pokemon thing, like just like a really weird outlier where it was like, do I have the time and energy to invest in something is it really going to matter for me to try and bridge the gap in this? And I remember thinking like to myself, no. And then I remember thinking like, I'm old. I just, I don't care as much as I probably should care to make this work. And just like having that moment of like, ooh, I feel kind of my age. I feel every bit of 29. Sure.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes.
You said something with a 20
I'm
in
not
it.
saying ancient. I'm not saying saying ancient. I'm saying I felt the divide.
I think
the divide.
I think this is probably harder for me than it is for you.
Okay, good.
Because I look older than you look.
I don't think so.
That's 100% false.
Okay, well, you don't wear sunscreen, and we live in Colorado.
I
and all I tell you all the time is like, wear sunscreen.
I wear sunscreen now, but I'm probably 20 years too late.
Okay, and you're on football fields all the time. You wear hats, but
also like I look older than you. You're like,
thanks.
You're older than me.
I am, but 2 years.
I look much older than you.
I don't think you look much older than me. I have way more gray hair. I just color it. Great. I
have way less hair.
Pick your poison, man.
I'll take.
You can have the gray.
I'll take gray all day.
Okay. I mean, it's so like those are parts of aging that I'm fine with. Like I don't care. Great. I'll dye my hair for the next 20 years. I don't care. Whatever. It's just hair.
I'll tell you the exact moment.
Okay, please.
When I realized I wasn't young anymore.
Okay.
It happened maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. That's actually way later than mine. So good job.
No, I'm just a slow learner. It happened way before then.
Oh, okay.
But when I realized it was pretty late.
Okay.
I was in the gym and I was doing some lift, and this high school kid commented on what I was lifting, like because high school kids usually do that. Like if you're lifting a lot of weight, they're really impressed by that.
They're very impressed.
And they're like, oh, da, da, da. And then he was like, how old are you? And I said, I had just turned 40. And I was like, I'm 40 years old. And he goes, you look great for 40.
But
I wanted to murder him.
Well, okay. But in defense of him, and you were like this too, as was I.
I've said that to people.
Person. Yes.
In my youth.
Every young person, you don't have a concept of 40. It feels so far off.
I know.
You're not even 20 yet, and that's 20 years.
I know.
From where you were at. Of course, it feels like so far off. They don't have a concept. And it's funny what we were talking about with our kids is like we were telling this to Everett the other night, like, hey, it's really strange when you start to age, because he said something about like, oh, well, I didn't know that part of mom. And you were like, hey, your mom's really cool. And he was like, well, not to me, she's not.
He said that out loud.
Is like what he said.
He flung that phrase into your face. Like,
not to me, she's not.
It was like, not to me, she's
like,
not.
Over here just taking darts.
Yeah. And you went, pew, 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 pew.
But you stay the same in your head. So to that kid, he can't know that. He doesn't know.
I know.
He doesn't know at all. But it does make you feel a little ancient. And I would say, I'll just speak for myself. I won't speak for you. But in my 40s is really where I've started to feel the aging. And we've talked about this with our friends before. It's like 40s are a really pivotal decade.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you don't keep it together in your 40s, it goes downhill real fast.
Yeah.
And I've seen people who have kept it together in their 40s and then 50s and 60s and 70s seem to be a little bit more smooth sailing.
Yeah.
But this is the decade where it like either goes off a cliff.
If it gets away from you in your 40s,
yeah,
getting it back in your 50s, 60s,
it's
70s
tricky.
is it feels damn near impossible.
Right. And you have to work really hard. Don't get me wrong. I think this is the hardest I've ever worked for the least amount of payoff.
Yes. That sucks.
So hard. I work my ass off and I'm, really specific and intentional about what I put in my body.
And then if I have 2 cocktails, it feels like it snaps back 2 weeks. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That I had gotten some sirs before I got that. Okay. You look great for 40.
Yeah.
But I chalked that up to courtesy.
Sirs will get you. Ma'ams get me a lot too. I feel like, okay.
Yeah.
Not a missus, but like ma'am. I'm like, okay. Well, it could be, okay. Yeah. I guess it's not a miss. Sure. No problem. But it is tricky how they like the little age things sneak in there for you.
I think your 40s does something to you mentally and physically. Because like physically in my 40s, like I've started to feel it.
I do think it.
I'm like swinging
it's
those
the mental game in your
swinging
40s.
Those socks on in my 40s is way more difficult than it was in my 30s and 20s.
It's the mental game in your and it's the recovery. So we talked about this. Like we went to the concert. We didn't drink really at all. I think we had a cocktail at dinner, and
it was
then
also
another
a Tuesday.
one and a Tuesday again. Because we're grown and we have to get up and drive carpool in the morning and whatever else. But you had gotten it for Christmas. We had talked about it. We had a plan in place. But even then, and then had another cocktail at the concert. But any more than that, it's like you can't get up.
No.
You're exhausted.
Yeah.
And we were fine when we got home. But even we didn't get home till midnight, and then you're up at 6. Like you're just tired. The recovery is brutal.
Here's some wisdom.
That's a thing for aging.
Here's some
really
wisdom that we can kick to all the younger people who are in their 20s and early 30s. Like, hey, as you start aging, day drinking is the best. Start your drinking early
and be done early.
Because if you're used to I start having a cocktail at like 8 or 8:30. Yeah. If you try to do that in your late 30s and 40s, like good luck tomorrow.
I mean, you were fine in your 30s. I think like your 40s. Then again, like everything, it's just off a cliff. Don't even try.
Yeah. So now, like when we go out for date night. Yes. Date night starts
at 4
early. And
give me the geriatric. Give me the early
no
bird
apologies
special.
for it.
Because I'd rather be home at night. We have shit to do. You got to get up and
I want to get
stuff.
some sleep.
Yes, and good sleep, not like weird. You need good sleep. There's just too many. There's too many things that are trickier to recovery as we age that weren't an issue when you're younger, and that's just a real. That's real.
So time obviously will age you.
Yes.
Let me ask you this question.
Okay.
Does parenting age you?
Yes.
I think parenting ages you in dog years.
Yes.
Ages me, not you.
Yes,
I think
it ages
parenting ages people in dog years.
It does. Well, and it's the lack of sleep. It's, we talked about this previously, like the worry, the anxiety. It's just all the internal unrest that you can't control. And a lot of those things. And some people, I would say, are better at it than others. There are certain friends of ours that we have that are pretty mellow parents. And they don't seem concerned about a lot. And they have relatively great kids. I mean, we won't know for a few years.
I don't know what kind of wizardry that is.
Right. I don't either. That is not us. And I always look at it sort of enviously, like, what are you doing? How are you so mellow about this stuff that you can't? What? You don't care that it's going to be fine? Everything's going to be fine? You're good? Great. I wish I had that sort of faith that like everything was going to work out with our children like that. And it's not that I just don't have that much faith in myself.
Yeah. It's
like, I don't think I have all those tools to like make sure that I'm going to cover all the bases. I wish that I did. I hope.
For me in parenting, it's stress plus exhaustion equals
but that ages
aging.
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
And I feel like we experience that a lot.
What keeps you young? Like, what do you think that you've done? Because I love, this is funny, and we talk about this all the time too. Like, I don't want to go back. There's not one part of me that you could pay to go back to like my 20s, even my early 30s. Too much change, too much tumult. I love our time together. I love the wisdom. I'll take the gray hair and the wrinkles and the crow's feet, all the things. I'm happy with those things. But what do you feel like you've done that has been good with age or makes you, has kept you young?
I feel like I have a different perspective on this because I don't, for the reason you talked about, like, I don't have a desire to like stay young.
Yeah.
That's not like, I need things that keep me young. Like physically,
sure.
Like exercise is the thing that keeps me feeling physically good.
Right.
But I want to feel the age that I am.
Yes.
And that's my goal.
Right.
Like I want to hang out with people who are in similar life stages. Like I don't have an interest whatsoever in doing things that keep me feeling mentally or emotionally the way I felt in my 20s and 30s.
And I
don't want that at all.
That's not healthy. I don't think so either. It's funny because you asked me about this because you're like, what do you love about yoga? And I was like, I love that there are 50-year-olds who look way better than me and kick my ass.
Yeah.
Who've had way more kids, whose kids are grown and are just crushing, lifting way bigger weights that are doing way better. And I like that. I like that they are older. So part of that with age, like that keeps me not young, but just keeps me, it helps me stay motivated, but also keeps me sharp. Well, I like that. I like the older people.
Yes.
I like to see people older than me who are crushing it.
I love that.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite things.
It's inspiring to me. It really helps me.
I think there's people who probably assume like, because like as educators, like the common educator answer for this is like what keeps you feeling young is people will say like, well, the kids keep me feeling young.
Right. Ooh,
and there's some truth to that. But for me, kids don't keep me feeling young because it's like, oh yeah, like I'm plugged into young people shit. Like I don't care about that.
No,
kids keep me feeling young because they right size adult problems.
Yes.
Because they don't care about any of them.
No.
Their world's very small.
Yeah.
And they're very egocentric, as they should be, because they're kids.
Yeah.
And it's nice to be around kids, not to plug into the things that they like,
right,
but to unplug from the things in our lives that seem big,
right,
and to recognize that for them, like they're not even on the radar.
Well, and
I love that part.
I do love that. I mean, I don't want to promote, the selfishness and sort of narcissistic behaviors of teenagers all the time, but that's just
but you get to be when you're a teenager.
No, you get to be, and they grow out of it, and that's great. But I do to your point. I really like the fact that they're really not aware of anything outside of themselves, but that is a nice respite here and there.
Yeah,
selfishly for us.
Yeah,
like I'm so glad you don't have to worry about a mortgage or a job or any of the things happening.
And
it's nice.
This is one of those.
That was you as a young person too, and it feels like it's like you see the goodness and how it's not naive, but kind of also just sort of the luxury of them being that age and naivety that comes with it. And that's great. And you get to plug into that sometimes. And it is a little liberating.
It should be comforting for anyone who works with kids to realize like, hey man, like you don't have to like what they like.
Right.
That's not your job.
No.
It is kind of your job to know what they like.
Right. Yeah.
And that very much is your job.
Yes, you can't be completely removed or not plugged in.
Correct.
It doesn't matter if you like it or not.
That's you don't have to like it.
You should know what it is.
But some sort of awareness about what they like is part of being good teacher, good coach, whatever it may be.
Well, and it's the thing that was my original made me feel old. It's like, okay, I know what that is. Do I need to invest more time and energy and understanding or caring about it? No, I don't. But I'm familiar enough with it. I care. I mean, I asked enough questions within the kids. It's like I'm asking them questions, and so they know I care not because I care about the thing, but I do care about them. Yeah. So that to me was a win.
Yes, important distinction.
And so after I remember like the feeling like, oh, there's a divide, and I feel pretty old, and I'm okay with it. Was like, that's okay.
That's okay.
Because they got the important part, which is like they know that I care about them because I'm asking about it, whether I care really, whether I'm a neutral about whatever it is that's important to them or not.
I think that's the dividing line for when people should step away from the profession or stay in.
Oh, good question. Oh, yeah, that's a good distinction.
Interest in the kids.
Yes.
If you're more interested in the coffee pot in the teacher's lounge than you are in the kids and what they like, it might be time for you.
Or I think like even in the content for you and I, like this is something, you're really interested in your content, but you're not necessarily in who it's going to or anything about those kids or what you're teaching them. I think that's a good check-in. I think that's a really good check-in, only because this has come up for us lately.
This is a real problem, especially for my fellow secondary teachers.
Yes.
And again, I talk about this all the time on the road. Like elementary teachers don't understand us.
Sure.
They think we're mean. They think we're, and it's like, no, like we're not mean. We just got into the profession for a way different reason than you did.
Yeah.
Elementary teachers, like you got into the profession because you love kids.
Yes.
Most secondary folks, we got into the profession because we love our content.
Right.
And then one of two things happens. Either teachers who enter into secondary, like you either grow to love the kids and have interest in them, or some of them don't.
Right.
And we all know those teachers who don't. And just so you know, like teachers, like if you're one of those teachers, like, and you think you're fooling the kids, you're not.
Yeah, they know who
they
you are.
Know.
Yeah.
They know.
They're so aware. Because they're really focused on themselves and their own feelings and how they feel in your class. So they're very aware of that.
Yes, right? Yeah. So like ideally, middle and high school teachers, like, you can come into the profession because you love your content, but sooner or later, like you got to love the kids too and at least be interested in what they're interested in.
And I want to defend teachers just like a little bit there and just the education, because I know we're kind of we talked about our own personal experiences in aging, but I do feel like it's been very unique in our profession in the last 20 years because of the rate of technology. And if you've been teaching 20 years or longer and you're trying to keep up with your content, but you haven't incorporated anything else, that's really hard. It's a big ask, and it's happening faster than you can change and update, even if you're teaching the same subject over and over. So that's really put teachers sort of in an odd space. And so I just kind of want to defend them there. That's where we are you tough. Feel your age every day.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
We used to be in this place as teachers where like we would pop into a classroom pre-technology and we were the expert in the room.
Yeah.
And now we've arrived at this weird place where like teachers walk into a classroom with students who have far more expertise in things that are technological in many cases.
Which hopefully should just be the tool, but if it's not, then that's a problem, and then, then you lose the kids for whatever reason.
It's just put us in a weird place where
it's a tough place to be in.
Expertise is shared now.
Yeah.
Expertise isn't isolated to the teacher, and you can either fight that and lose, or figure out like, hey, there's a multitude of expertise in this room, and I got to use the expertise of the room as opposed to just the expertise that I'm bringing to the table.
Well, and I think that takes a lot of vulnerability, and it's really tricky, and maturity. Yeah. A lot of maturity.
And also, humility.
Yeah. I do think one of the great things about aging, and I'll just say it, and then I'm going to ask you, one of the best things about aging, and I like the wisdom that comes with it, but I also think I've always been a relatively serious human being, but I like that I've sort of learned to laugh a little bit more, and I'm not easygoing, but I have mellowed somewhat as I've gone in age, and that is welcome. Definitely welcome for our family. I'm sure it's welcome.
Every part of our lives. It is welcome.
It is. That's what I'm saying. So I appreciate that about aging, and I will continue to welcome that. That's something that's been really important to me. What about you? Like, what's been the best thing do you think has come with age?
Oh, not caring about things that I used to care about.
Yeah.
The same, right? Like
your give F is at 0 in your 40s.
Yeah. Like
it's great. It's so great.
It is the blessing of aging.
Is. I don't care what you think at all.
Yeah. Just finally getting to a place where you recognize
not
like,
you, but
like I think collectively,
the collective,
but finally getting to a place of like, hey, the things I used to care about in terms of like other people's perception.
Yes.
I get to not care about anymore.
Well, and that doesn't mean that we don't care about the person or we don't care about their feedback or any of that. I think that's a maturity, right? Like I can take your feedback without taking it personally.
Sure.
But I can also hear your perception and hear your perspective and not care or think it's accurate or just not have it impact me in the way that it used to. That's been glorious.
Yeah.
Really wonderful.
Yeah. I had I had a woman come up to me after a keynote not too long ago. Mm-hmm. And there's one story in this keynote that I do where I say shit in the story. And you have to, because it's a thing that was said to me by a mentor that
teacher,
I had.
I know the story.
It's the button to the story.
Yes.
And she was just like, I think it's very inappropriate that you would say a profanity in your keynote.
Was she older? And of course she was. She wasn't younger. Yeah.
And in that moment, I get to not care.
And you said something snarky, I feel like, back to her. Were you respectful, I hope?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
because I remember you telling me this. You were like, oh, this lady hated my shit.
I think my response was something along the lines of like, if that's all you got out of the last hour,
you missed it.
I'm sorry you missed it.
Yeah.
You know, like I get to.
That's respectful. That's fine.
But again, like,
and that's true.
You are totally welcome to that opinion.
Yes. I don't not care.
I don't understand your need to share it with me.
Sure.
Voice it. There's a world where you can just leave with the other 1,000 people and say that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or there's this world where you can come up and let me know that, like, here's how you feel about it.
That's really, I mean, that is a great part of aging that I really do, I think is invaluable. Yeah. And as you continue to get older, we'll just get better and better.
And I get to, in that moment, be like, I really don't care.
Yeah. Thank you for your feedback and
also,
be on your way.
Also, like, if you've been a classroom teacher for as long as you've been, you've heard way worse than this.
Well, maybe not if she's an elementary school teacher. I don't know.
Guaranteed.
I mean, I get
There's
it. I'm just
nobody wilder than elementary teachers.
I know they're wilder. I'm just saying in terms of her classroom, maybe she's been, whatever her norms are, maybe that wasn't there. Anyway, it's okay. You get to not care. That's a great part about aging.
You said something earlier, and we'll end with this, just about getting older and wiser.
Yes, let's hope.
Do you think we've gotten wiser, or are we just exhausted and not willing to argue about it anymore? Oh, that's funny.
Probably both.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah, probably.
I would say both. I people talk about like picking your battles, and I was always, I tend to have a lot of fury and get enraged about injustices or things that I would really like to change. And it's not that they don't bother me like they used to. I do. I think I'm more selective about what I allow to enter into my space to disrupt me. Yeah. Because our life is chaotic and our children are going everywhere and you're on the road, and our peace is so few and far between, and we really have to cultivate it and create it and keep it really sacred. So the little nonsense things that would piss me off, I think as I've grown mellower, right? Like with age, I've allowed to sort of keep that space a little bit more sacred, and I just don't let it, I don't know. I don't let things roll off, but I just don't care or get as infuriated as I used to. I still have the passion. I'm a passionate person. I still have that. That's never going to go away. That's who I am at my core. But I just don't get like, oh, I need to fight this battle on this person's behalf right now because of this thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I think if I'm being really honest, I think actually more of it is exhaustion for me than I'd care to admit. Than it is actually wisdom. Yeah. Because I think there's moments where I'm just like, do I really want to go to war over this right now?
I'm really working hard to try and be wiser and not reactive, but just, parenting, especially when you're gone, it's me and the kids, and that's hard for all of us. And so I'm not trying to not care, but I am trying to be more intentional about just being thoughtful and responsive and not necessarily reactive to whatever they have going on. Again, carving out that piece.
Yeah.
Really trying to hold that.
My metric has become like, if it negatively impacts like my family and people I love, then all right, we're probably gonna get after this. Yeah. But if it doesn't, okay. Like then I'm looking at myself like I am the lady who talked to me. Like, okay, I got two options.
Well,
here.
That's wisdom.
I can either bring this to your doorstep, or I can move on with my day.
That's wisdom.
And more, I'm moving on with my day.
And there's only so much time you have in a day. It's like, why do I need to bring this here? I need to, hold your peace sacred. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. And that's okay to do. Great.
Okay.
Great. Let's keep aging.
Yes.
Let's keep doing it.
I do I'm embracing every new decade.
Yeah, me too. I think it's really important.
This will be the last thing I say.
Okay.
You have done a really good job of helping sort of like reshape this for me.
Tell me more. How so?
Oh, just like my outlook on birthdays.
Oh, yes.
Right? Like,
you don't really love them.
Yeah, I didn't really care or love birthdays. Like the whole notion of like I don't need a bunch of people to come over and have a party to celebrate me. Like that makes me wildly uncomfortable even as a thought.
Yes.
But you had told me a while back, like, hey, like, let us celebrate you. Mm-hmm. It's as much for us as it is more so for you. Right. And also it beats the alternative.
Right. And I just don't like being cavalier about a new year that you get to share with your family or be on the planet or have new experiences, new adventures, new learning, more wisdom, another year of all the things that get to be great. And so that's an important perspective.
I've made an active effort to sort of reframe it this way, especially because we both have people in our lives who we've lost at this point. And it's just like, man, I would kill to have those people back.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's part of them that would just like, would have killed to have had one more year.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, maybe. We don't know. We're not there.
We don't know.
None of us get out of it, but nobody knows.
But I'm
sure.
We're
all first timers.
I'm I'm sure at the end, it's just like, oh man, if I could just had one more good year. And so it's like, hey, you know what? Like I get one more of these.
Just making every year a good year, whether it's to your point, like whether you talked about suffering or learning or growth, there's always something to be had and be grateful for in another trip around the sun. So let's keep aging.
Well, let's
keep
doing aging. Thanks you guys for listening. As always, find us anywhere you find podcasts. Find us on our YouTube channel. Find us on all the social medias. You can find me. Goodness, where am I going to be? You can find me in all the places. Go.
Yes.
Yeah. Molly, where can we find you?
You're going to find me hanging out at my kids' schools separately and collectively together. It's one of the things I've been trying to work on is like volunteer a little bit more. So I'm really trying to get in there. So hopefully you'll see me at a school near you.
With young people
With
feeling
young
old.
People.
Yeah. Thanks you guys. We'll catch you on next week's episode of Teaching Keating. Be well.